I still remember the moment I realized everything had changed. Not because my boss called me into his office, not because I'd seen my coworker's smug grin, but because I caught a glimpse of myself in the polished glass of the elevator door. I looked tired, hollow-eyed, like someone who had been showing up every day for years and finally wondered why. It began 6 months earlier, on a bright Monday morning that smelled of fresh coffee and copier toner. I strode into the open plan office of the Harrington Group, a mid-sized marketing consultancy I joined straight out of college, with a folder of ideas cradled in my arm and an eager grin. My coworker, Eric, was already there, feet up on his desk, scrolling through sports highlights on his smartphone. He glanced up, offered a half smile, and tapped his screen. "You're never going to believe this comeback," he said, without taking his eyes off the game. I set my folder down at my desk. "Morning, Eric. You ready for Johnson and Lee's pitch today?" He shrugged. I'll wing it." Then he leaned back in his chair and spoke to nobody in particular. "Anyone got any snacks?" I shook my head, turning to collect my notes. Something about his casual disdain cut into me like a red flag waving in a wind I'd ignored for too long. I'd been with Harrington for 5 years, starting as a junior account coordinator, then promoted to account manager, and finally senior manager. I'd led the Johnson and Lee account to a 30% increase in web traffic, devised a viral campaign that doubled their social engagement, and trained 2 new hires who went on to receive company awards. My boss, Martin, once told me I was the kind of young talent companies dream of. Meanwhile, Eric, well, he was a different story. He arrived late, left early, and spent most of his time in the break room playing video poker on his laptop. When deadlines loomed, he'd copy and paste other people's work and tweak a few lines. His billable hours were always suspiciously low, yet somehow, year after year, he avoided any real review. I convinced myself it was none of my business. I had my own career to focus on, but each time I watched him stroll through meetings without a word prepared, or saw his name go up on the promotion board with "Congratulations. We know you'll do great things," in neon letters, my stomach clenched. The announcement came on a cold November afternoon. Our department gathered in the conference room for the quarterly all-hands. Martin, our director, stood at the head of the table with a stack of printed sheets. He praised recent wins, a new partnership, an award nomination, then looked down at a list. "I'm pleased to announce our next group of promotions." He cleared his throat and read names: Katrina Lee, Senior Account Executive; Michael Chang, Lead Strategist; and congratulations to Eric Johnson, who will be stepping into the role of Associate Director. My heart stopped. Associate Director? I sank into my chair, confusion knotting my thoughts. I replayed his blank stare in my mind, the way he'd shrugged when I asked if he'd prepared his quarterly report. I looked at him. His hands were folded, like he was expecting applause. No one cheered, no one even tried. Yet Martin beamed as if he'd just won a Nobel Prize. I could feel every pair of eyes in the room flick to me, then away. Later that afternoon, I cornered Martin by the coffee machine. "Eric," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm happy for him, but can you help me understand why?" He sighed, stirring sugar into his mug. "Alex, you know Eric's been with us a long time. He's part of the furniture around here." He gave a forced smile. "We need someone who knows the ins and outs of the department to help me with leadership tasks." I pressed, "But we all know he's not exactly the most driven. You've told me before I'd make a good director." He looked away. "You have strong leadership potential, but I need someone who's a team player, and frankly, someone who won't ruffle feathers." I stared at my mug, someone who wouldn't rock the boat, someone who blends in, someone utterly complacent. The next morning, I found Eric playing solitaire on his desktop. He looked up and grinned. "Hey, congrats," he said, two-fisted in excitement. "Party at my place Friday night?" I forced a smile. "Sure, congrats." As I walked to my desk, my legs felt like lead. How had my boss come to value complacency over competence? How had I spent 5 years pouring every ounce of creativity and effort into this company, only to be passed over for someone who clearly didn't care? I spent the rest of the day in a haze. Emails from the CEO announcing Eric's promotion arrived in my inbox. Slack channels erupted with gifs of champagne bottles popping. I sent my own congratulatory message, professional, polite, but inside I felt hollow. That evening, I went for a run in the park behind my apartment. Rain was forecast, but the air was crisp, and I needed to move. My shoes thudded against the wet pavement. My mind replayed every detail of the announcement. My mind raced. I could ask for a meeting with HR. I could lobby for another promotion track. I could volunteer for a special project, but each option felt like banging my head against a brick wall. I ran until my calf muscles burned, then sprinted back. By the time I reached my door, soaked and exhausted, I knew. I chose not to ask for permission or explanation. I drafted my resignation letter that night, cheeks pressed to my laptop screen. words flowing until 2 a.m. Dear Martin and Harrington leadership team, I have always valued my time at the Harrington Group, and I am grateful for the opportunities to grow professionally and contribute to our clients' success. However, I have made the decision to pursue another path where my efforts will be matched by mutual recognition and support. Please accept this letter as my formal resignation, effective 2 weeks from today. I will ensure a smooth transition of my accounts and responsibilities. Thank you for everything. Sincerely, Alexander Reynolds. I saved it as a draft. Red wrote the final line 10 times. I needed it to sting just enough. I settled on thank you for everything. May our paths cross again in a happier context. I hit save, then closed the laptop. The next day I would hand this to him. The following morning I arrived at Harrington an hour early. The office was quiet, still. I poured a cup of black coffee and looked at my desk. A framed family photo of me and my sister when we were kids. A small succulent that I'd named Spike. A tangle of project files. At 9 a.m. sharp, Martin strode past my cubicle. His tie was crooked. He paused. Alex, can you come into my office? My heart hammered. I gathered my speech, took a deep breath, and followed him down the bright hallway, through a glass door to the same leather chair where I'd pitched campaigns and brainstormed ideas. He sat down behind his oak desk, cleared his throat. Before he spoke, I slid the printed resignation letter across to him. His eyes flicked over the header, over my signature, then up to my eyes. Alex, he began, but I held up a hand. I'm sorry it's come to this, but I can't stay here and watch mediocrity rewarded. He winced, as if I'd slapped him. Then he leaned back. It's not mediocrity. Sometimes a team needs someone who keeps the balance. Balance, I said. You need someone who leads. Someone reliable. Someone who cares enough to do the work. He rubbed his forehead. I'm sorry you feel that way. I closed my eyes. The tension in my chest tightened. I'd rehearsed this moment. I'd pictured him begging me to stay. I'd pictured me storming out, feeling triumphant. But none of it mattered anymore. I just needed the final line. I leaned forward, heart pounding, and said the words I'd practiced at 2 a.m. Thank you for everything. May our paths cross again in a happier context. Silence stretched. The seconds ticked like a metronome. Then I turned on my heel and walked out. I stopped at my desk, unplugged my computer, and tucked my succulent into my bag. My sister had wanted me to name it Spike. I'd named it Hope. I didn't look back. Instead, I headed for the elevator with my 2 weeks' notice in my pocket and a strange lightness in my chest, like I'd shed a burden I'd carried for too long. When the elevator doors closed behind me, I caught my reflection once more. The same tired face stared back, but the eyes were different now, clear, determined, and ready for the next chapter. And as I descended, I felt for the first time in months that everything might just be okay. When the elevator doors opened on the lobby floor, the chill of air conditioning hit me like a relief. I stepped out into the bustle of morning commuters, but I felt oddly insulated from it all, as though I were walking through a bubble of clarity. Clutching my bag, I strode to the front desk, dropped my access card onto the receptionist's tray, and watched it flash red 3 times before she slid it to her side. No need to say anything. Handing over my badge was resignation in itself. Outside, the sun was bright and chilly. I unzipped my jacket and let a gust of January wind clear the fog of 5 years' routine. For the first time in a long while, I had no office to go to, no inbox to manage, no late-night printing jobs. My next move was unwritten, and that both thrilled and terrified me. I called my friend and former mentor Olivia immediately. She picked up on the second ring. Hey, I heard. You okay? She asked, voice warm. I laughed. A raw, unsteady sound. I guess I am. I handed in my resignation. There was a pause. That's huge. What are you going to do? I shrugged, even though she couldn't see me. I'm not sure. I want to do something that actually matters. Maybe start my own consultancy. Maybe take a few weeks off. I need space. Space, she echoed thoughtfully. I've got a spare desk at my firm if you need it, and some clients who could use your brains. I smiled, grateful. Thanks. Let's grab coffee tomorrow, and you can fill me in. On it, she said. Congrats on taking the leap. I ended the call and felt a smile spread across my face. It was true. I had taken the leap. That afternoon, I walked into my favorite coffee shop. A cozy place with exposed brick walls and windows that looked out onto an elm-lined street. I ordered a latte, extra shot, no foam, and found a corner seat with a view of the street. I pulled out my phone and wrote an email to my team leader at Harrington. Thank you for the opportunities and experiences. Wishing you and the team all the best. Hitting send felt like dropping an anchor into still water. The ripples were just beginning. I spent the next week in reflection and research. I dusted off my old portfolio, updated my resume, and created a website for my freelance services, Reynolds Strategic Consulting. I reached out to Katrina Lee, now a VP at Harrington, who'd always pushed me to share my ideas. She sent back a referral for a startup seeking a marketing strategist. I took the call, pitched a high-impact growth plan, and landed my first contract, 2 months of advisory work at a modest retainer. I framed the contract letter on my desk as a talisman of new beginnings. Meanwhile, news arrived that Eric's promotion had destabilized the team. Projects missed deadlines, client satisfaction dipped, and whispered frustrations circulated in the hallways. Staff morale sank so low that Katrina confided in me. The place is falling apart without you. You have no idea how many people come to you for guidance. She didn't say it was clear I'd been the glue that held the team together, but I heard it, and it fueled my resolve. Word of my consultancy spread by word of mouth. At a weekend networking event, I bumped into Malik, an old college friend now running a philanthropic nonprofit. He asked if I'd help design a digital fundraiser to replace physical galas canceled by the pandemic that had arrived in our city. I said yes on the spot. By Monday, I was building a microsite for them, integrating donation tools and scripting the launch. They raised $120,000 in 48 hours, more than any event in their history. The success felt like proof that I could thrive outside a corporate cocoon. Yet, even as I basked in these early wins, I harbored a quiet ache, the sting of being overlooked by Martin, the bitterness of watching complacency rewarded. I knew the only way to heal was to stay focused on the future, not the past. One crisp Friday morning, I walked into Harrington's headquarters, not as an employee, but as a guest. Olivia had arranged for me to lead a workshop on digital storytelling for their senior team, part of a professional development series. I arrived early, set up my slides on the conference room screen, and balanced a cup of coffee in my hand. As colleagues filed in, some faces familiar, some new, I noticed Eric among them, conspicuously seated at the back, phone tucked away and eyes fixed on the screen. He looked anxious, uncomfortable. I swallowed a pang of satisfaction and reminded myself to stay professional. When the session began, I launched into a case study of the viral campaign I'd spearheaded years ago. I wove stories of client triumphs, missteps, and the data that guided each pivot. The room hung on every word. At the end, the CEO of Harrington himself strode in, unannounced, wearing that uncanny smile of his, and approached the podium. "Alex," he said, voice louder than the mic would allow, "your workshop has been enlightening." He turned to the team. "Consider this a taste of what we've been missing. I've asked Alex to consult with us for the next quarter. We'll be reversing some structural changes to keep her on board." A ripple of surprise swirled the room. Eric sat with his jaw slack, as if struck. I waited for the punchline that this would be some interim gig, a face-saving measure, but the CEO's eyes were earnest. "I was wrong," he continued, "about who is driving this company forward. We'd be fools to let that talent slip away." He glanced at me. "Can I count on you, Alex?" I met his gaze, saw the weight of the apology there. Yet when I opened my mouth, a different voice spoke, one forged by months of independence and triumph beyond Harrington's walls. "I appreciate the offer," I said, voice steady. "But I've charted a new course." I saw gasps, heard the rustle of papers. "My consultancy has clients who depend on me, and I'm under contract. I'm proud of what Harrington and I built together. But my chapter here is over." Silence rippled, thick as velvet. I looked at Eric for an instant. He didn't flinch, but I sensed he wanted to apologize. I turned back to the CEO. "I will always value this place," I said, "and I'll support you remotely as a consultant, but I won't return as an employee." Then I clicked the remote to end my slides, slid from the podium, and gathered my things. Outside, the morning breeze was cool, carrying the scent of damp pavement and city ambition. I closed my eyes, breathed deeply, and felt the remnant tremor of adrenaline. Colleagues streamed past, offering congratulations or awkward applause. Some had tears in their eyes, others offered handshakes that were almost hugs. I accepted them all, with a smile that felt genuine, because I wasn't resentful anymore. I was free. That afternoon, I met with Malik at the cafe under the elm trees. He grinned when I approached. So, how did the workshop go? I settled into my chair. Better than I expected. I took a sip of my latte. They asked me to come back as a consultant regularly. Malik raised his eyebrows. Nice. He poked his coffee. So what's next? I tapped my watch. First, finish the digital fundraiser. Then I've got leads on 2 more nonprofits. And next quarter, I start a masterclass series on strategic branding. He nodded. Sounds good. Feels good? I smiled. It does. I sipped my latte, feeling the warmth spread. I quit a job that didn't value me. I built something of my own, helped companies raise hundreds of thousands, and taught people who didn't believe in me how much I had to give. And I have nowhere to answer but my own ambitions. Malik laughed. That's the spirit. I glanced at the elm branch overhead. New buds forming. Spring was coming. Come what may, I said. I'm ready. And in that moment, I felt the echo of my own words from so many months ago. Thank you for everything. May our paths cross again in a happier context. Only now the future looked brighter than I could have ever imagined.